President Donald Trump has once again placed the Antifa movement at the center of America's political storm. In a late-night declaration posted on his Truth Social account, Trump said he will designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, describing it as a radical, violent, and dangerous threat to the country. The president's post on Truth Social was sharp and uncompromising. Donald Trump said, "Antifa is a disaster, a sick, dangerous, and radical left-wing organization." He added in the same message that he would strongly recommend that those who fund Antifa be investigated. This statement, framed as both a warning and a pledge of action, builds on years of Trump's rhetoric. Since 2017, he has consistently accused Antifa of being behind violent protests, destructive riots, and even the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. In Trump's words, the loose network of activists represents a domestic enemy, one that must be dismantled with the same urgency as foreign threats. The Antifa label originates from socialist groups in the 1930s Germany, which mobilized against Hitler and the rise of fascism. In the United States, however, Antifa is not a registered body or formal political party. Instead, it functions as a loose network of activists who identify with anti-fascist politics, frequently appearing at demonstrations against right-wing groups. An official study underscores this point. The US Congressional Research Service, in a 2020 report, concluded that Antifa has no national leader or centralized organization. Instead, it is made up of independent, radical, and like-minded groups and individuals. Critics of Trump's designation argue that branding such a movement as a terrorist organization is problematic because of its lack of formal structure and leadership. Trump has frequently linked Antifa to incidents of civil unrest. He has repeatedly claimed the group was behind the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, despite evidence pointing to broader involvement from pro-Trump extremist groups. In his political messaging, however, Antifa has become the symbolic enemy within, a target used to galvanize his base and frame law and order narratives. On the steps of the Capitol during the infamous day in 2021, images of chaos remain etched in national memory. Thousands of Trump supporters surged past barriers, forcing lawmakers into lockdown. The president has insisted since then that Antifa played a decisive role, though investigators and congressional committees have not substantiated that claim. The announcement also echoes a narrative advanced by senior White House officials. Just days before Trump's declaration, Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, told reporters that the administration was actively dismantling what he called a large domestic terrorist movement. Miller went further, tying Antifa to the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a statement that has raised eyebrows and stirred controversy. Stephen Miller said, "Such an absurd question. President Trump has achieved 7 peace deals in 7 months. No president in history has done more to advance the cause of peace." He's been nominated by multiple world leaders for the Nobel Peace Prize. Though Miller's remarks were partly a defense of Trump's foreign policy record, they underscored the administration's effort to frame Trump as a peacemaker abroad and a crime fighter at home. Linking Antifa to both violent crime and domestic terrorism fits neatly into that strategy. Recent footage and images highlight Antifa's continued presence in international demonstrations. In Neu-Isenburg, Germany, banners with the Antifa logo appeared earlier this year during left-wing rallies. In Paris, protesters have marched wearing Antifa-themed clothing, mixing the movement's symbolism with broader campaigns against Islamophobia. These appearances reinforce the idea that Antifa is more a global ideological current than a centralized US group. For Trump, however, the practical structure of Antifa matters less than the political mileage he can draw from attacking it. By labeling Antifa as a terrorist group, Trump sends a clear signal to his supporters. America's instability is not the fault of his administration, but the work of radical enemies within. This approach recalls his earlier use of law and order politics. In 2020, Trump deployed federal forces to Portland, Oregon, to quell protests that he claimed were instigated by Antifa. The move polarized public opinion. Some praised it as decisive leadership, while others decried it as an overreach into local governance. The legal question of whether the US president has the authority to designate a domestic movement as a terrorist organization remains unresolved. Unlike foreign entities, which can be designated under existing US law, no clear framework exists for labelling domestic political networks as such. Civil liberties groups argue that doing so risks criminalising political dissent and violating constitutional protections. Still, Trump has rarely allowed such constraints to limit his political messaging. In his recent declaration, the president framed the issue as one of public safety and national security. By positioning Antifa as a clear and present danger, he shifts the focus away from criticisms of his administration's handling of crime, policing and political violence. The president also used his platform to showcase action at the state level. Donald Trump said, "Today, at the request of Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee, who's standing with us, as you know, I'm signing a presidential memorandum to establish the Memphis Safe Task Force. And it's very important because of the crime that's going on, not only in Memphis, in many cities. And we're going to take care of all of them step by step, just like we did in DC. We have virtually no crime in DC right now." This statement, part policy pledge and part political boast, underlines how Trump ties the Antifa designation to his broader narrative of tackling crime in American cities. Donald Trump's decision to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization is both a symbolic and controversial move. While supporters hail it as a strong stance against radical violence, critics question its legality and warn of dangerous precedents. With Antifa lacking a central leadership structure, the announcement may be more political theatre than actionable policy. Yet, in an election season defined by sharp divisions, Trump's message resonates. America is under threat, and only his leadership can restore order.